Thanks. Well, I mean, I think we should take a lesson from the powerful and the rich. They understand this perfectly well. That's why the population has to be kept in the dark. Actually, the professor of the science of government, I love that term, at Harvard, leading policy intellectual Samuel Huntington once pointed out that power must remain in the dark. Exposed to the sunlight, it begins to evaporate. And he's right. That's what lies behind the kind of things I was talking about, and you know much more about it here. So one thing you can do is to expose power to the sunlight, and it will evaporate. That's why the massive secrecy has to be maintained. But that's not enough. Exposing power to the sunlight has to be a preliminary to the only thing that has ever worked in history, mass popular organization. And that has achieved results. It has plenty of results. Right now the Troika is trying to dismantle and destroy Europe's great post-war achievement, the social democratic welfare state. And they're pretty frank about it. Mario Draghi, the head of the central bank, said a couple of years ago that the social contract is dead. It can't be maintained. Why? Not for economic reasons, just because they have the power to dismantle and destroy it. Well, that doesn't have to happen. The power is actually in the hands of people like you, but it's got to be exercised. And that requires organization and action. As an individual, you can do very little, but when you get together, you can do almost anything. And that's been demonstrated over and over again through history. I mean, you mentioned Occupy, which is interesting and important. I mean, if I had been asked myself, say, should occupy Zuccotti Park in New York, my judgment would have been it's pointless. I was completely wrong. It was very successful, remarkably successful. Within days, weeks, there were hundreds of Occupy movements around the country, others in Europe. I actually spoke at an Occupy event in Sydney, Australia. They were all over the place. It lit a spark which had a real impact, and it changed a lot of things. Changed the discourse, put inequality on the agenda for the first time, and now phrases like 1%, 99%, just common coin. And but remember that Occupy was a tactic. Tactics, it wasn't a movement. It's a tactic that every tactic has diminishing returns. Can't keep doing it over and over. And this one in particular couldn't be continued. You cannot occupy a central square, say in New York or Boston over the winter. It's just impossible. You're sitting under 5 feet of snow, and the population won't accept it after a time. So it has to turn into a movement, and to some extent it has. But I think that's the answer to your question. There's no magic tricks. That's the one that's worked all through history. It's made real achievements. There's always regression. Power systems don't say, thank you, we're going to give you the power. They try to maintain themselves, and that's class struggle. It goes on through history, and it'll continue.